Now what? Am I supposed to learn fourth next? Is that what we're learning next? No. Hold on. That's pretty good. Let's focus. Sure. Right. Actually, hold on. Let's. Where were we? And why does it seem like we're insisting on making. Why does it seem like we don't trust anything that we wrote on the preceding day? Well, chat. What if. What if Descartes was right? What if Descartes' theory concerning the deceitful demon was correct, and I only feel as if this text is what I wrote down yesterday, or I only feel as if I recall what I wrote down, and I never investigate. I just say, yes, I can pick up where I left off here. I remember what I was doing, but it's a fake sensation, chat. I'm being tricked by the evil demon. It's saying, yes, you remember how you got to this point. So you have maintained a thorough and complete understanding of what this means, because you have a chain of thinking up to that point. It's just a feeling, chat. It's just a shock in the chest. Just a pinch in the spine. Real math is done from the beginning to the end by hand, and you don't use infinity. Okay? Anything you cannot complete yourself in one sitting is not math. Alright, what if we start in the other direction and we say A is equal to the empty set, or B is equal to the empty set, or A equals B? Interesting. Theorem 99. Inline fourth. Alright, so we're saying there exists an X such that not there exists an X such that X is an element of A, or not there exists a y such that y is an element of B, or not A is equal to B. Now, do we need a refresher on what this statement means, not A is equal to B? Let's get a quick look at what that means. Not A equals B. Though this is a little bit by definition, and I want to maintain that the author. Actually, we can do this as. Well, this wouldn't be a conjecture, though. It wouldn't be a conjecture that these two are equal. It would be an assertion that this is. It would be an assertion that this is the equality. This is the interchangeability that we should maintain. Well, yeah, it's about when we put in the symbol, when we use the equality symbol, and when don't we use the equality symbol. Yeah, again, we need better line saving techniques. I shouldn't have to write out this intermediate step, but then I don't want to get lost skipping a step, but then there's some intermediate, like using colors or something in a consistent way to prevent from making a mistake. I shouldn't have to write out this entire line. This bracket is wrong. Okay. Nope, that bracket is wrong too. Okay. If anything, we could do this bracket. Okay, then we're gonna have not x is an element of A. Nope, we're gonna have x is an element of A, and not x is an element of B, or x is an element of B and not x is an element of A. There exists an x such that x is an element of A and not x is an element of B. Why is it there exists? because it would be for all x. Yes. Okay. Let's make a note of that. Let's see. While I am thinking about it, this comment line says, while I am thinking about it, for all x, x is an element of A, then x is an element of B, and x is an element of B, then x is an element of A. Okay. If and only if, so this quantifier not, no, there exists such that not. Okay, then what? Right, that's end of comment. We get, that's where we get our there exists from. Okay, now what? Alright, so there exists an x such that x is an element of A and not x is an element of B, or there exists a, I see. So this or expression diagram blue, and I could do violet blue or violet. Let's do violet. Okay. Now we're going to have x is an element of A, and not x is an element of B. Nope, though that would be nice. Yeah, no, you can't do that. Or x is an element of B, and not x is an element of A. Or not there exists an x. Oh, so there exists an x. I see, so we do like this. Right, which is one quantification, and then we have a distinct quantification. Or there exists, or not there exists an x. So maybe we want to say not there exists a y. Okay, so I want to make a point about these quantifiers, but how do I make this point? There exists an x such that x is an element of A and not x is an element of B, or x is an element of B and not x is an element of A, or not there exists a y such that y is an element of A, and or not there exists a z such that y is an element of B. Z is an element of B. Yeah, so this raises a quantifier puzzle that I'm not sure I know how to solve. What do I mean? So this is talking about a specific element. So let's see if we can come up with a set that exemplifies what this is claiming. So if I say there exists an x such that x is an element of A and not x is an element of B. Alright, so what happens if we choose the standard complement? A is equal to the set 1, 2, B is equal to the set containing these elements 2, 3. Okay, now what? Now I say one is an element of A. And not one is an element of B. Though also 3 is an element of A and not wait, hold on. 3 is an element of B. Yeah, we have to flip the letters. 3 is an element of B and not 3 is an element of A. Okay. Now what is the point? Okay, let's see if I give, let's give this red, okay, and this orange. In this case, red is false. And also orange is false. Okay. And what does that tell me? Well, if alternatively we said C is equal to the set containing as elements 4, 5. Okay, and now I say C is equal to the set containing as elements 4, 5. Yeah, though, how do we say this? If we're going to keep this expression as is, there exists an x such that x is an element of A and not x is an element of B, or x is an element of B and not x is an element of A. Okay, if I try to make the same assertion here, there exists an x such that x is an element of C and not x is an element of B. No, yeah, that's still true. Okay, that wouldn't be the direction to go in with this, though. We could check and see what happens here. Let's go or x is an element of B and not x is an element of A. Okay. Now, what is the idea? So, yeah, this is still true because, actually, here's what I guess what we'd want to do. Okay. Okay, now I say, let's just do it over here in the same fashion. So we have that 4 is an element of C and not 4 is an element of B. And 2 is an element of B, and not 2 is an element of C. Okay, and red and orange are still both false. Now, one question here is, are these actually contradictions? So let me do, let me see. So this is a question about the color. So we're going to do comment, and then I'm going to do the color, and then I'm going to do red to note that this is a first comment of this first colored comment on the page. Okay, now what? So we have orange, brown, then comment, color, and red. What is this supposed to tell me to do? This is supposed to tell me that we have orange, which corresponds to there exists a Z, not there exists a Z such that Z is an element of B. This is false, and this is a comment, so I'm supposed to explain why this gets the coloring it does, and this is the first comment that we're making, so I can keep track of comments. Okay, now what? Now, the idea is that, so is this actually a contradiction, would be a question here. Yes. So we'd be saying, well, we'd have to be willing to accept this as a contradiction, I guess, whatever that means. Yeah, well, we'd be saying not there exists a Z such that Z is an element of B and 3 is an element of B. Okay. So this would be orange. This would be green. And I guess we'll do... Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. Let's see. Alright, so... Now we have there exists C such that C is an element of B and 3 is an element of B. Semicolon 3 is an element of B. Probably double crosshatch. There exists Z such that Z is an element of B. Actually, whatever. Alright, now. So this is a contradiction. Well, because we can say then not Z is an element of B. Rather, oops. Not there exists a Z such that Z is an element of B. And there exists a Z such that Z is an element of B, which is plainly a contradiction. Okay. Hence, hence orange is false. Okay. And that is the continuation of I feel like a wizard. I feel like a wizard with my magic colors. Would you also like to feel like a wizard with magic colors? Okay, now what? Yeah, why did we want this observation? It's kind of whatever that means. Yeah. Let's see. So now we're going to have. Okay, so we want a different example. Right. What is the different example we want? Actually, we could do this as well. Okay. What is a different example we want? Well, naturally, if we had D is equal to the set containing as elements 2, 3, okay, then we would have yeah, maybe that is the example we wanted. 2 is an element of D, and 3 is an element of D. Okay, and 2 is an element of B, and 3 is an element of B, is what we get out of these definitions. Yeah, we could use blue probably. No, we kind of can't use blue. Hmm. Yeah, actually, that doesn't work so well. Yeah, well, actually. Hmm. How do we? Yeah, that's the question we're trying to get at, and I haven't figured out how to get at it yet. But actually, we did pass over it earlier. How do I know the not 4 is an element of B? Interesting. But let's finish this process. Oh no, that has. I guess that has to be orange. Okay. And then Spanish orange for A. 1 is an element of A. Okay. Now, what is the idea? So the point we're trying to get at here, B is equal to the set containing as elements 2, 3. Okay. Which is given. Not 4 is an element of B. How do you know? Do violet blue there maybe. Alright, now what is the idea here? Well, so do we take this statement, B is equal to the set containing these elements 2 and 3, to be equivalent to saying, or is it defined as saying, 2 is an element of B, and 3 is an element of B, and not 4 is an element of B, and not 1 is an element of B, and not 5 is an element of B, and dot dot dot. Okay, because then I can say... it's about to get a little bit out of hand, but I'm going to triple crosshatch this. Who knows what that means? Let me see. B is equal to the set containing its elements 2, 3. Then not 4 is an element of B. Okay. If B equals the set containing its elements 2, 3, double crosshatch, 2 is an element of B, and 3 is an element of B, and not 4 is an element of B, and not 1 is an element of B, and dot dot dot. Okay, triple crosshatch, B equals the set containing as elements 2, 3, allows the derivation of the statement that not 4 is an element of B. Okay, seems reasonable to me, though my threshold of reasonability is low. Okay. Now, but if we don't have this, I think I should mark this as a conjecture. Well, no, I'd say this is not a conjecture. If it's the case that we define B equals the set containing these elements 2 and 3 this way, this is true. So I judge. Okay, with the question being, do we define B in that way? Do we choose to define B in that way? Or rather, yeah, do we choose to define this set definition? It's an interesting contrast here. It's not about the truth of this assertion, whatever it's saying. The truth of this assertion does not depend on, the truth of this assertion doesn't depend on how we choose to define set equality statements like this. If this is what we chose as the definition, this would fall out of it, is what this assertion is saying. Or what this is asserting. And this doesn't depend on what we actually chose as the definition. If it turned out that this is not how we wanted to define the set containing, or if this isn't how we wanted to define a set definition statement, this statement would not be false, but it would be irrelevant, I suppose. Now, the alternative observation is that if B is equal to the set containing its elements 2 and 3 is rather defined as 2 is an element of B and 3 is an element of B, then this does not give us the mechanical juice to do much more. Okay, I guess I want to say then not. Yeah, okay, how do I negate a biconditional like this? This is false. Okay, and this would be the statement that if this is instead the definition. Now it's interesting, we're not negating this expression up here. What do I mean? We're not saying if B is defined as not this, or if we said B equals the set containing its elements 2, 3 is not defined in this way. Instead, we're offering this alternative positive statement. If B is defined in this way, then it is not the case that yeah, I don't know what to say about that. But okay, we can't derive that not 4 is an element of B from It's like we'd want the ability to obliterate this statement. What do I mean? We'd want, well, so in this, with this definition of the equality of B, let me think. Well, so if I had B equals the set containing its elements 2, 3, and 4 is an element of B. Alright. Now in case A here, and then in case B, okay, in case A we're saying if and only if 2 is an element of B and 3 is an element of B and 4 is an element of B and not 4 is an element of B and not 1 is an element of B and not 5 is an element of B. I guess I want to demonstrate the spiral that we would do back and forth to catch all the elements by what's what I'm wanting to indicate by having 1 is an element of B, then 5 is an element of B, and only after that putting dot dot dot. And that before the dots, if anything, but I'll just put dot dot dot. Okay, now that would be our case A. Okay, whereas with case B, oh, and then we would clearly have 4 is an element of B and not 4 is an element of B, which would be a contradiction. Makes the entire statement a contradiction. Because it's all ands. Which I guess I want to indicate with and. Okay, then what? And furthermore, we could do a lot of green floating around. We're getting a kind of yeah, we're getting because we used two. Yep, we used these colors the last time we had these two elements in a row. Familiarity breeding further familiarity. We have, just to indicate that we're taking these elements from we would have been better off with violet, maybe. Okay, and what? Alright, so that's a case. And then we have B is equal to the set containing its elements 2, 3. And that will be case B here. Alright, and 4 is an element of B. And what is derivable from this is that 2 is an element of B, and 3 is an element of B, and 4 is an element of B, and that's it. Okay, which is not a contradiction. Which actually that would get comment, and then orange. Or actually we could do red again. With good reason. I'll do poppy red. Really? What this coloring scheme is forcing me to do is remember what I'm keeping track of, what characteristics of this analysis I'm keeping track of. It's like I have a stack, and I'm adding to the stack. Aha. And then I push arguments onto the stack, and then I pop them off when I'm ready to do so. Okay, then what? What is all of this telling us? Well, so we need a broader definition of... Yeah, though there's it's not... If you write it out like this, it seems a little bit more absurd, but if you instead say... let's see... B is equal to the set containing these elements 2, 3. If we define this instead, I guess this would be case. Yeah, okay. Case 3 here. Let's see. 2 is an element of B, and 3 is an element of B. Okay, and for all x not x equals 2 or x equals 3 in brackets negated, not x equals 2 or x equals 3, then not x is an element of B. Okay. Lisp code where you keep track of the state of the program and it lights up the color in different code in different colors based on whether that code is active and what state it's in. And so I step forward my program one list item at a time and I ask, what is the state of this variable? What is the state of this variable? I feel like debugging would be easier with that sort of step-by-step. Maybe. Though you can reconstruct what the step-by-step state of element variables was. As in, if you run displays, it shows you in order what has been going on with those variables. Anyway, what is this telling me? Well, this would work, right? Because we'd be saying, let's see. Well, yeah. Now that I'm thinking, the condition is, I don't really think of equality in terms of the condition anymore. I prefer the or statements, I guess. 2 is an element of B, and 3 is an element of B, and for all x, we will take x equals 2 or x equals 3 or not x is an element of B. Okay. Oh, and 4 is an element of B. I guess here we want... Yeah, where's my super comment color? Well, this is sort of salient here. And for all x equals 2 or x equals 3 or not x is an element of B, and 4 is an element of B. Okay. Now, I should have grouped this up. Yeah, the distribution of this is awkward, maybe. Oh well. Alright, we'll do... Now this is list processing. This is similar to list processing. I have to assign the correct sequence of colors to command my own attention into the correct alignment with the data on the page. Okay, sure. Now we will say 2 is an element of B. Okay. Actually, how do you do this? Yeah, no, I think we're obliged to. I think our typical formatting would have us do this in the other direction. What do I mean? So, what I don't like about this operation, though this could be a completely erroneous dislike, is that all of these terms are associative and-wise. So, and. Now the point would be that if we go in the other direction... No, yeah, what we're trying to accomplish is that the signs, the and the or signs, are opposite. But that's not a... Hold on. I see. So if we go in this direction with starting here with this and we distribute through... Okay, this is complicated enough that I think I'll comment on it. So this will be this is poppy red, so I guess we'll go to... I think I want to go to green because this is no longer in the same chain of thinking. Okay. Now, so I have 2 is an element of B, and 3 is an element of B, and 4 is an element of B. I shouldn't have gotten so close to this. Yeah. And for all x equals 2, or x equals 3, this shouldn't be double bracketed, or not x is an element of B. Okay. Alright, that's kind of an awkward start to this comment. Because I needed to indicate why we would choose this. I don't know, this is going to be a little bit awkward to finish out, but that's okay. Okay, and so the point here is that this and is the opposite sign of this or. I'm going to do a little bit of okay, and actually I'll go ahead and comment this one as well. Remaining aware of what is relevant to a comment. Interesting. Now, as opposed to... Yeah. Let me see here. Okay, so now what we're going to do is... Now, why would this instill in me a preference? It might make no difference. I guess we should. Well, actually, then we can write a theorem. Settle this once and for all. Okay, how do we do that? Let's see. Yeah, Well, so this amounts to saying... Well, let's see. If we say P and Q and R or S, okay, is that interderivable? Does this produce the same outcome? If I have a doubt, why not explore? Let's find out. Alright. And this will be a kind of lemma for us. Okay. Now, what is the idea? Well, so this is going to be P and Q and R. Or P and Q and S. Alright. Let's see, R or S and P. And R or S and Q. Okay. Well, this is horrible. Let's prod it. Let's poke it and prod it. Okay. Claim this as red. Okay. Okay, so now we're gonna have, I'll write it back out, P and R, or P and S, okay, yeah. You know, one of the routings we could have taken was to say, okay, no one in their right mind would do this kind of calculation. No one would learn how to do this. We're supposed to use the theorems. We're supposed to use our established theorems. Yeah, well, I didn't take that routing. Okay, so P and R and Q and R, or Q and S. Okay. Or P and S. That's over bracketed. No. Yes, that is over bracketed, but not over here. P and S and Q and R, or Q and S. Okay, and now what is the idea? Now it is time to distribute in this fashion. Okay. If and only if P and Q and R, let's do a little bit of and collapsing here. I haven't checked chat in a while. Anything going on, chat? Oh, let's see. Hello. Alright, I'm glad you got in an hour there, Paranoid. Good to get an hour in now and then. What does this look like? Boolean algebra on steroids? Never mind, you're not here anymore. Yeah. Yeah. Alright, so now we have Boolean algebra on steroids. Yeah, it kinda is that, isn't it? So P and Q and R. Okay. Or P and Q and R and S. Okay. Or P and R and Q and S. Okay, which is now dark green. Or P and S, P and Q and S. Systemless parents. Yeah. Alright, now black. Let's see. Now what is the idea? Now, do we have any idea what these statements are telling us anymore? Nope, no idea. Okay, let's see. So we have to go back. So this gives me P and Q and R, or P and Q and S, which was on the left-hand side. Okay, now, so to fulfill this comment, I want to observe that I'm running out of color pairs. Yeah, well actually we have a reason, we have a pattern like this. Yes, and I will use yellow. Yeah, this is a lot of color that's getting dumped under that. It's gonna be more obvious over here. Clear straight edge, by the way. Boonful. Let's see. So with this sequence, we have So this is R or S. This is our R expression. R or S or T expression. Our or expression. Okay. Okay, but then in that regard we didn't give ourselves enough letters, or it's not obvious how to generalize here. Interesting. What do I mean it's not obvious how to generalize? So critical to this line of reasoning is going to be this statement that for all x, not x is an element of b, this or statement. Okay. So p colon not x is an element of b, or q colon not x is an element of b, or dot dot dot, or z not x is an element of b. Okay. One of these expressions. No, that's incorrect. Hold on. This is a misstatement. No. This is correct. We're not trying to match one of these. We're trying to say that one of these variable names is associated with x as an element of b. Okay, and then what is the point? So notably, all of these have p. So suppose case red. Okay. Case poppy red. Okay, case violet blue. Or violet. Now the point here is that let me see here. Right, so the assertion is that one or more of these. Well, actually, so if it's red, if it's the red case, which we might note is further stacking of this casing. I chuckle now, but this becomes the standard in my own future. We want to be doing this, like it. There is no such thing as an absurd level of consistency. Alright, we're adding to the stack here, red. Okay. We're in a comment, it's green comment, which tells me what? That the comment begins up here. Alright, and then we're in this case, okay, of the yellow kind, of the yellow turn. Though then we need to do something like this. Well, it doesn't need to be on both sides then. There's no benefit, or we lose a stellation. Now I want to start using that term after unit Tauna. we lose a stellation. So here I have bracket up to indicate that this is, oh, that's the wrong bracketing, isn't it? Yeah. It should be teal yellow and comment green. Okay. No, if I bracket both sides, I either lose the resource of being able to spread these brackets out, or I lose an information source, or an information repository, because I could selectively place brackets above and below the colors to indicate something in particular. Or I could use it for housekeeping. I could do bracket up, bracket down, so that I don't get interference. Which also loses a repository of information, but do I need it? I could spread this out more and it wouldn't be a problem, but then I'm starting to take up a substantial amount of the line. Alright, now what is the idea? Right, so we have teal yellow, which is this side of this biconditional, crosshatched biconditional expression. And then we have case red here. Though then, yeah, maybe we need a dedicated case color. It's like a juncture, it's a case juncture. Because I don't want to leave this red by itself, because what does that mean? Unless I'm going to resolve all of this locally, but then this is like there's an unjustified lack of extension to a lack of extensibility to this scheming. But okay, so we're on case red. If the statement is P, then of let's see, of this case, of this green OR sequence, becomes let me see. Well, yeah, for in the red sequence, P is an element of all of these. So this becomes false, 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 false. The reason being that we would have for all x, not x is an element of b, and one of these other expressions. So I'll put that in. Because we would have, let me see. Right, so again we'd have the statement for all x, not x is an element of b, and then any of these other statements is x is an element, or there 2 is an element. Well, actually it would be, yeah, okay, 2 is an element of b, and 3 is an element of b, and 4 is an element of b. Okay. So, and this, if nothing else, is a contradiction with this expression, and for, I guess I would do this, where we say the green statement is red and poppy red. Well, it's red and, well, it's P and Q and dot dot dot. Hence the contradiction is here, and then here. Now when I say that what I've done lacks extensibility, it's that I don't know where to put what letters. So this expression is P and Q and R and S, which is 4 terms, but this is actually really only one more term, so we should have just done it. No, this is, hold on, why isn't this 4 terms? Well, this is P and Q. Yeah, but actually this is a bad layout, because what this statement is really, what the statement ends up being is P and Q, hold on, well, these are the same. No, hold on. No, now that I'm thinking about it, I don't really know. Like, these obviously it can't be contradictions, merely stating that x equals 2 and x equals 3, but these also aren't the same statements as saying 2 is an element of B and 3 is an element of B. Well, okay, but if I continue, we know that we get this contradiction with P and Q and dot dot dot, contradiction again, or dot dot dot, which is some kind of observation that I will put a box on. Okay, and now what is the idea? So this shows that red always produces a contradiction. Similarly, if I do comment and then true green, turquoise, no, teal rather, yellow, and poppy red. Okay, then we also get that P and Q and dot dot dot. This is a contradiction because of the Q. Okay. Or P and Q. So all 4 of these statements have a Q in them. Now things get different though. P and Q and dot 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 or dot dot dot. This is for poppy red. Alright, so this is a contradiction. Okay, however, this does not continue, this pattern. Though I get to continue the pattern. You just want to keep looking busy, and ideally being busy. And then no one can accuse you of not doing math, if you are doing math. Well, no, somebody could accuse you, but last I checked, that person was not doing math. That is a false statement. I have video evidence. Yellow, and then orange. Now, so P and Q and... So this is a case where R is equal to, or R is defined to be not X as an element of B. So P and Q and R, which is the true green case, that is a contradiction. Due to nothing else, Q and R, and then the sequence out with and. Alright, and then the next expression is P and Q and R and S. and now this is a contradiction. Informatively switch it over to S. Should be a good general habit. I don't want to keep doing Q and R because it's visually confusing into thinking it might be Q that's critical and not the R. So I suppose. Okay. Or P and I did this out of order. So it's also true for dark green, however, it is then not true for black. Oh, I should have merged these. Actually, we could do that here. Right, with a little proof color behind it. And then noting that these are equal, I will do an or collapse. Alright, and then, so this is also a contradiction. Okay. Not sure about where that dark brown should have gone. Or P and Q and S. Which is not a contradiction. Interestingly. And then I will do comment green. Actually, did I mess up my colors for comments? Maybe not. Yeah. Alright, but all that means actually is that this should be comment blue. So we're gonna get a blue-green comment color. Hey. Okay, and then comment blue. And this comment is a color comment. Note the lack of contradiction color. Okay. Now what is the idea? So this is also some kind of lemma. Which is like there exists a statement such that it is not made a contradiction it's not a contradiction in the orange case. Okay, now what? What is this? I don't know if you're still here. You're not. Alright. But this is set theory. Arguably. Alright, so we don't get an expression, rather we don't get a contradiction out of this expression. Okay, and now that's the lack of extensibility that I'm fretting over because we don't know. If I continued the pattern, if I had, let's see. If back up here I used all three terms, P and Q and R, and S and T and U. Instead we went with 4. And now the question is, can I deduce what the correct extension of this is? So which expression do I get as the which expressions do I get as the not contradicted expressions? Now the simpler thing to do here the more certain routing is to say we have 2 is an element of B, and 3 is an element of B, and 4 is an element of B. Okay. And for all x, x equals 2, or x equals 3, or not, x is an element of B. Okay. And now what is the idea? Now the idea is to say P and Q and R and S and T and V. Okay, because U looks ridiculous. What is that little appendix? What is that little tail thing? The vestigial thing. Now, what are we gonna do? So we have two options. Okay. The first option is that we do this. And then we have oh, we could have done violet just fine. We can, that actually kind of looks like indigo, but we can overwrite it. Should I learn color fourth, you think? I wonder if that would actually make an interesting use of color or not. I've heard about such a fanciful language. Let's see. Okay, and now the second option is to do P and Q and R and alright, now one of these is substantially faster than the other. One of these is like petting a porcupine in the correct direction, and the other is like petting a porcupine in the wrong direction. As it were. Okay. Now, which one is which? Let's see. Okay, so we want bifurcation usage red. Okay. We might not, yeah, I guess we don't have to mark until we use the second. That's gonna save some effort. Okay. Okay. Now, for this case, we're gonna have P. Oh, that's incorrect. We have this case. Right, okay, so we're gonna have let's see, well, we can write this out as that's too much. Well, and S or yeah, that's a little bit off. And Indigo. Or light cerulean blue and violet. Okay. Now we can immediately answer this question. And what is that question exactly? That's complicated. Well, yeah, we could. Let's see. So yeah, well, the point is that Vx is not an element of B is tied to this one. Okay, so what I'm going to do here, partially as a joke, but maybe not completely as a joke. What if someone hit me with the old not math accusation? What would I do? This was supposed to be blue. This was supposed to be this color. Okay. And then the color. And then the contradiction color. What if this is what my code is doing behind the scenes and that's why it's so slow? Okay, so now what is the idea? Here's where you'd want brackets, right? Sure. Alright, now what is the idea? So this violet and let me see, violet. Yeah, actually, it struck me that we could start lining these up. Lining up the colors so that I'm not so often at a loss for where a color is. So violet, actually light cerulean blue and violet. Yeah, then we would, I guess we'd want some paperweights. Compass is a paperweight. In this context. Alright, now we're going to construct a list. And it's not much, no, it's not really a list, it's more of a vector. Okay, let's see. So light cerulean blue and violet is, in this context, the same as saying, oh, well, why didn't we, well, okay, I guess it works. Okay, so we have the blue statement P and Q and R, which is 2 is an element of B, and 3 is an element of B, and 4 is an element of B, And so I suppose this quantifier for all x, not x is an element of B. Okay. Now, this is a contradiction. Okay. However, it is the only contradiction. Okay, and that leaves us with what? It leaves us with saying that 2 is an element of B and 3 is an element of B, and x is equal to 2 and x is equal to 3. Which tells me that x is an element of B. No, hold on. So we have 2 is an element of B, and 3 is an element of B, and 4 is an element of B. And x equals 2, or... Well, what are we trying to get at with these x expressions? Because I guess if we instead take... Yeah, not for nothing, we could have underlined this case with a color sequence. We could have done red again. Actually, okay, red. Puppy red. And orange. Okay, now this is the red case. Now if we instead do the orange case, light cerulean blue and... Oh, we should do poppy red, I guess. Sounds like the ordering is something like induction. Indigo blue. Then we're saying... Okay, we're saying 2 is an element of B, and 3 is an element of B, and 4 is an element of B. And for all x, x is equal to 3. What is that supposed to mean? No idea. And then if we went with orange, at the end we get for all x, x is equal to 2. Okay. Okay, and that is... case examined. So this is taking on a broader meaning here. Okay. Now, actually, yeah, that works pretty well. Yeah. Let's see. We need another paperweight. I could arrange the camera so that this collage of colors was in camera. What would I use as a paperweight? I could have a look around. Hold on, I'll be right back. I should take a break anyway. I might do the whole thing on set theory today. We'll see. Okay, now the other case. Mm-hmm. Okay, so if we go in the other direction. Okay. Well, I guess we'll keep the same ordering. But that's, hold on. Okay. Delicately now. Okay. So this is all ANDed together now in this routing. Okay. Okay. That would be saying for all x equals 2 or x equals 3 or not, x is an element of B and 4 is an element of B. Okay. And now derivability. X equals 2 and 4 is an element of B. Or x equals 3 and 4 is an element of B. Or 4 is an element of this is a little bit lacking in quantification. And for all x. Yeah, it raises the question of where this quantification is. Let's see. Asking a color question with regards to the presence of quantification. Yeah, I'm not sure that's the correct. asking a color question with regards to the color. We're gonna drop into an infinite loop or something. Alright, why is this? Well, so if this is saying, we'll do a pushed case here. So red, we'll do reminder teal, red. Where's red? Well, you know, if we were putting the colors in order, you wouldn't have to ask where red is. You would see and be aware. Here is red. Okay. And then what case am I taking here? Teal, red, yeah, and then... Alright, we're asking a question about quantification. Okay, so I think I'll do comment. Maybe we'd want to say quantification comment. Case. Okay. Then we're not labeling this comment with a color for now then, which is a bit off. But what is the point here? So if I say for all x equals 2 and 4 is an element of B, or for all x equals 3, or no, and x is an element of B. No, 3, hold on. X equals 3 and 4 is an element of B. Or for all x, not x is an element of B, and 4 is an element of B. These seem like confused statements. And this one would be a contradiction, but they're all ORed together. It's interesting that this would grant a contradiction. Yeah, this doesn't seem to be the spirit of the quantified expression. Though notably, if we instead make this comment about, oh, this is an interesting move. This is a pretty interesting move that I'm pulling here. What do I mean? Fascinating. Right now, this is a way of teleporting our attention. You can't see because my color resolution is so low, but I have surreptitiously swapped out colors. This is now poppy red instead of red up here, poppy red down here. Alright, and what does that do for me? Now, so I say for all x, well, the poppy red case, if we come back here, we are in turquoise, poppy red, and that is indigo, and that is 3 is an element of B. Alright, so we say for all x equals 2 and 3 is an element of B, or for all x equals 3 and 3 is an element of B, or for all x not x is an element of B and 3 is an element of B. Alright, so this remains a contradiction over here. Okay. I should move that. Okay. And then same point here that this is indigo blue. An unquantified color application. What does that mean? Means, I mean, maybe this is the real comment, is an unquantified color application. This is purely for redirecting attention as opposed to making an assertion, which takes place in this kind of sequence. Getting extra fancy. Yeah, I want to be the fanciest. I want to be extra fancy. Let's see. Okay, but now what about teal, red, quantification violet, comment, and teal again. Alright, so that case... Oh yeah, I probably could forego these colors and just keep the line. This is incidentally bracket and then bracket, I would say. Okay. Now we say for all x unclear. No, I've downsized chat. I've had people trying to talk, so maybe I shouldn't downsize chat. Okay, now. For all x, well, what is the teal case here? It has to do with quantification. Right. X equals 2 and 3 is an element of B, or x equals 3 and 3 is an element of B, or for all x, not x is an element of B and 3 is an element Hmm. So this remains a contradiction. This is the same as saying let's see, x equals 3 and 3 is an element of B. If and only if, I think. No, it would be then. But that means we can and it on also. Then there exists an x such that x is an element of B. So in that case, we would be getting x equals 2 and 3 is an element of B, which is meaningless gibberish. Or not B is equal to the empty set. Okay, though this also has that's either interesting or not, I don't know. I'll put a colon here. I'll highlight this colon a little bit because this is a pretty neat sequence. Now we have x equals 2 and 3 is an element of B. Then 3 is an element of B. Then not B is equal to the empty set. Okay, so then we have not B is equal to the empty set, or not B is equal to the empty set. Fascinating. Does that mean anything? Okay. Unclear that that means anything meaningful. Now, but if I go back, so here I have to fill in an alternative color, so I will go back. I'm sort of leaning towards the idea that this is, that logic is just an intricate form of coloring and has no real meaning. And it's all wishy-washy and inconsistent. Inconsistent as a technical meaning, but wishy-washy and inconsistent, that no one actually does logic consistently, carefully. That does not seem like a good supposition to hold. And yet, I don't know. What have we actually seen logic do for us recently? Seemingly nothing. Well, notwithstanding coding, where logic is occasionally useful. Okay. Now, so in this case, we're taking Poppy Red instead. Okay, now we don't have a copy of R, but R, yeah, now we don't have a copy of R, which is 4 as an element of B. Mm-hmm. Yeah, hold on, let's do a little bit of... Alright, now what does the idea? Now, so if I say for all x equals 2 and oh, I messed up. Yeah. So this was actually Poppy Red. And that's like a data structure error. We can just pop this one right in there. No worries. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so now for all x equals 2 and 4 is an element of B. Okay, or... So this is the case where, right, turquoise, or teal, this is the case where the quantifier is over the entire expression. X equals 2 and 4 is an element of B, or... let me think here. X equals 3 and 4 is an element of B, or not x is an element of B and... Wait, but this is a bad step actually. This is keeping all of this surprisingly manageable. Look at that. Let's see. Violet. So what is the problem here? This invocation of the quantifier is questionable. Yeah, let's make that point. Okay. Color, red. Yeah, kind of overwrites, but whatever, I can still read it. Alright, now. So. Oh, hold on. This needs to be made red, but we can go up the color hierarchy conveniently. We can go back on the color hierarchy. Pink, comment, color, red. Which is an extension of this case. Okay, and now we're gonna say so for all x, I want to do like string logic. I want to do logic on strings. What does that mean though? It means what I really want to say here is that let me see. As a sample, this statement that not x is an element of B and 3 is an element of B. Okay. Okay, now I want to make a comment about this being a contradiction. Well, I could say you can derive a contradiction from this and then double crosshatch. Yeah, well, this is where I'd want to say if and only if this quantifier, and then I make the quantifier color, if and only if this position is occupied by for all x. Okay, that's getting extra fancy as well. We're saying a contradiction is derivable from this expression if and only if this slot is filled with for all x. That kind of commentary is getting, again, extra fancy, but reasonable, I think. Because I don't know how to say this is a contradiction without this universal quantifier, because I don't know what this means without the universal quantifier. If I say for all x, not x is an element of b, and 3 is an element of b, that sounds like a contradiction to my ear, and then I can justify the assertion that it's a contradiction in various ways. But if I merely have not x is an element of b and 3 is an element of b, well, actually, I think the idea would be that if you have, if I'm going to do shorthand here, not x is an element of b, then for all x, not x is an element of b. Well, no, that wouldn't be the point, I think. Actually, the point is that this quantifier is out front and quantifies over the entire expression. Yeah, but does it? What does it mean to say that this quantifies over the entire expression? I mean, if we take a step back, there's an earlier part of this expression where the meaning is much clearer. We're saying 2 is an element of b, and 3 is an element of b, and 4 is an element of b, which I want to comment. We'll use sort of emergency invocation of the system error color. 2 is an element of b, and 3 is an element of b, and 4 is an element of b, and for all x equals 2, or x equals 3, or not x is an element of b. It seems like there should be a better way of... Well, these statements where I say x equals 2 and 4 is an element of b are meaningless, aren't they? Or alternatively, I could ask, what does it mean? Yeah, well, that's why we're splitting this. This turquoise case is saying if the quantifier is with each of these expressions, we're saying for all x equals 2 and 4 is an element of b, and then that would give me that. Interesting. Not x is an element of b. Or rather, not 4 is an... Well, hold on. Let me think. For all x equals 2 and 4 is an element of b. No, I mean, that doesn't give me, for instance, that not x is an element of b. Yeah, and that's what all of this, that's what we started here. This question about quantifiers and what they mean in this context. Seemingly nothing. Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, if we go back to this expression, for all x equals 2, or x equals 3, or not x is an element of b. Is a clear enough way of saying that only only 2 and 3 are elements of b. But then I can't figure out how to establish that 4 is an element of b as a contradiction. Well, one way to do this, something that just struck me is, so if I have, maybe what I'd want to say here 2 is an element of B. And 3 is an element of B. And 4 is an element of B. And it is derivable that there exists an x such that x is equal to 2, and there exists an x such that x is equal to 3, and there exists an x such that x is equal to 4. Okay. And now the idea is that we will have if we suppose that this antecedent is true, yeah, I don't know what it means to suppose that this antecedent is true. I guess what I'm wanting to say is that we should be able to well, why wouldn't we be willing to step down the conditional? I forget what we're trying to prove, but it's generally worse to step down the conditional. An interesting point. This is kind of a strange point that I no longer have any clear idea what it is that we're trying to prove, but I do know that I want to hold on to the biconditional as long as possible. I want to preserve the right to step down the biconditional at my leisure instead of being forced into stepping it down. Well, and then the point would be whether we give this to ourselves as an and, or if we give ourselves... Well, okay, so the idea would be that if I have 2 as an... Yeah, but if I have that 2 is an element of B, then I also have that there exists an x such that x equals 2. But the question is, do we take ourselves as having these expressions? Well, and again, the idea would be that if I could take cases, I could say, I think the antecedent is true, then I get these, and then I can work with them. If I say, I don't know if the antecedent, or I say the antecedent is false, well, then we have to figure out what to do then, but I still don't understand this bizarre conception of the conditional where the antecedent being false makes the statement true. Well, it's because you have, if you're willing to take the conditional equivalence where you say P then Q, not P or Q, well then not P negated. Yeah, but that doesn't make any sense either, and I want to get this point. I feel like it's slipped through my fingers too many times. What do I mean? Okay, so I'm going to do this on scratch paper. Well, am I though? I could do it. Let me see. Yeah, but we're going to have to figure out some fancy notation. Well, we'll make a big deal out of it, okay? Give plenty of room for extra coloring. Alright, I'm going to block off this entire section, and now what is the idea? So if I say P then Q is interderivable with not P or Q, okay, don't want to spill any math. Okay, now I say P then Q is interderivable with not P or Q. Alright, now, so what is the idea? Now we want to say there are two cases. Where P is false. We'll do true first, I guess. Okay. And then we have the case where P is false. Okay. Now what is the idea? Okay, well, if I say not P or Q, so am I giving myself am I giving myself license when I say, when I'm taking these cases, am I giving myself license to say and P? Yeah, I don't get what it means when we say, like, if P were false, well, then we wouldn't give ourselves and P. I feel like that's nonsense. I feel like that's gibberish. Like, I can have an expression that says not P or Q whether not P is true or false. Okay. Not P does not mean false. Rather, it evaluates to false when I have P is true. Incidentally, we would get interderivable with P or not P, which is a tautology, or, no, rather, and P or Q. Okay, and now this is a tautology, so the expression as a whole depends on P or Q. Let me see here. Well, yeah, and this is the, I guess we're saying this is, yeah, but again, like, P itself is true or false. And yet what we would do in the turquoise case is say not P or Q and not P. If you see the strangeness here, I feel like I see some strangeness here, but maybe not. What would be the oddity? But if P is false, then this statement, this expression would be true. So this is like saying, I'm losing some of my coloring discipline, incidentally, but so if we said not P, well, yeah, but I want even more parenting than usual. So not P or Q. Okay, we don't know what the Q truth value is. And then I say and not P. Alright, now I've said that P is false. Okay. So this statement is true. Similarly, this statement as a whole is true because we negate the falsity. Okay. Now let's go back to the turquoise case where we say not P or Q and P, or bracket and put parens. right, and now I say that P is true. Okay. So I think actually I think I might actually see what the point is. Maybe. Alright, so what is the point maybe? So we're gonna say that P, not P or Q and P. So I think one of the ideas here is that I can always and on a tautology. Okay, so if I had, say, assume that S is true, okay, but this is the weirdness. What do I mean? Normally what we would just say is, so assume S, and now I'm going to put that in quotation marks. Okay, and that's going to be saying S is true. Okay. Well, and the point is that I could have let's see. Assume S. I guess the way we treat it is that we say this is a weird observation. I guess we have to get a lot of these out of the way until logic becomes like a habit where I don't have to ask these questions. I guess I'd want to say T if and only if T and S. And now the point would be that I don't have to step down the conditional in the other direction. If I have T and S, I can have T without stepping down the conditional because I can always and the S back in. And that's because S is a tautology. So that means that the truth value of the expression as a whole depends on T, which is what I've been indicating using Toscan red in this case. Toscan. Tuscan. Rouge Toscan. Sure. Okay, so what bearing does this strange line of reasoning have? Well, so the point is that if I say P is false, then I'm free to introduce not P because it's a tautology. Okay, so I can and that on to any term without stepping down biconditionals, for instance, because I can add it into any expression I want. As it were, I could keep the biconditional and then and it on at the end. Okay, and what bearing does that have up here? Okay, so now the question is, right, so if I assume this antecedent is true, then 2 is an element of B, 3 is an element of B, and 4 is an element of B. Okay. Then I can say, and there exists an x such that x equals 2, and there exists an x such that x equals 3, and there exists an x such that x equals 4. Okay, and now the idea... is that I can carry these around with me, but if I assume that the antecedent is false, then I can't and these on. Instead, I get that this entire expression is true, but for my mechanical purposes, that's meaningless to say that this entire expression is true. I mean, I don't need the truth of this expression, I need something else. I'm not sure if I'm making the right observation here. What time is it? We have about 10 minutes. So I want this expression because... well, so as we noted before, this expression for all x equals 2 or x equals 3 or not x is an element of B is straightforward and understandable. But then there's no way to... yeah, we're wondering again, how do we get our contradiction? How do we get a contradiction out of this? Let's go further back. Right, let's close this comment. Whatever we thereby accomplished. Okay. And now I say... two is an element of B and 3 is an element of B and 4 is an element of B. Alright, so this has to be the source of a contradiction one way or the other, or else it's not clear why we're using this syntax. And for all x equals 2 or x equals 3 or not x is an element of B. Okay. is that if we could take that could have been poppy red. Yeah. Though we've kind of dropped this convention and kept the rigid separation of colors, and I kind of like that. So I could have done poppy red, Spanish orange into light green, and then we would have had two that were in red spectrum. And then in the past, we allowed light green to be a sort of extended red spectrum, and the point would be that it's nevertheless different because this case is different. But we declined that opportunity when we chose red because now it would be too garish to have red into Spanish orange. So we're gonna have instead orange into Spanish orange. Okay, to really make these kinds of distinctions on the fly. It's what separates good mathematicians. What separates good mathematicians from mathematicians who don't enjoy their coloring, I guess. Alright, so we'd want to say in the red case here, this is really our root. It's like I want to put a golden rod here. Because we're all the way back at this expression. This is kind of a root to all of these observations. Fine. Notebook management error. Custodian. Alright. Let's see. So, yeah, but then it's hard to say what colors we should have here. I guess I could just do red for now. So 2 is an element of B, and there exists an X such that X is an element of B, because it's derivable. Okay, and there exists an X such that X equals 2. Is that the idea? 2 is an element of B and there exists an X such that X equals 2, then X is an element of B would be the idea. Is that we could derive that syntax in particular of saying 2 is an element of saying X is an element of B. And for all X, X equals 2 or X equals 3 or not, X is an element of B. Yeah, that doesn't do anything special though, does it? Well, actually, so if we distribute this case, we would get... No, I can't figure out what this is supposed to be doing. What time is it? Alright, I'll spend 4 minutes thinking about I've been studying philosophy of math for about 45 minutes before bed, roughly, for the past week or so, which I was doing in the first few months of this project as well. Sort of got away from it. Thinking I might pick up a book or two, additional book or two on philosophy of math for bedtime reading. It's making me look more carefully at what it is that I'm doing while engaging with these math books. It has me questioning more about the process of working through. Perhaps thence the source of so much emphasis on quantification, which is what all of this was about. What do these quantifiers mean? How are they being used? How can I get them to do what I want them to do? How do I have to mean them in order that they do something useful for me? Seems like a good bedtime reading. They need to tone down some of the logic. I mean, it is keeping me on track with, it's like studying enough logic appears to be a prerequisite for engaging with philosophy of math, which is more motivation to do this foundational work. Like, if I conceive of the ideal allocation of 13 hours a day or whatever, that hour at the end of the day, that extra reclaimable hour doing philosophy of math, requires a certain amount of logic. If we can claim that hour, though, it's like a permanent multiplier on our efforts. A constant multiplier that we gain. But yeah, the amount of logic that's required to read some of this stuff is really in depth, and I don't possess it. Simplified, or I don't know if there's a textbook on it that I'm thinking of acquiring. Okay, and if it's reasonable, if the textbook that I'm looking at is reasonable, what it will do is say, hey, all of these papers that I recommend in philosophy of mathematics, as in the author of the textbook, all of these papers I recommend require knowing these bits of logic. I will teach these bits of logic in addition to whatever else, showing their application. That would be useful, though then you could accomplish the same thing merely by reading a logic textbook. Alright, well, I will head out. Have a good one, and see you next time. How colorful. How much color we got in there today. Look at that. Absurd amount of color. Alright, see you next time. Goodbye.